for PhD students. So you can see here is just kind of a list of faculty, and hopefully we'll go in this order. We'll skip Nirmala since she's not here. But first Claire can go, and I'll stop sharing my screen, so hopefully she can go ahead.
Okay, so hopefully you can all see my screen. So I am the director of the Computational Biosciences Lab. And so our lab has been up and running for 5.5 years now since I started at Boise State. And the main focus of our lab is to apply computational models to help us understand the mechanisms of disease and injury and degeneration, and then ideally to use those models to help us solve those problems. And so the models can range from, fairly simple. So this is a little knee joint model, to a little bit more complex, where we have a whole body model with a bunch of ligaments, all force-driven. So we're creating that, in this case, a chair rise in a more physiological way. And we also kind of can look at more detailed, what's happening at the joint. And this one over on the left, the right-hand side, is showing how the cartilage at the knee joint, so the end of your femur, the top of your tibia, your kneecap, your patella, how that varies across a population. So we sort of look at the spectrum from an individual subject-specific model where we're analyzing what happened to this particular individual, all the way up to populations where we're looking at, well, what happens across a population. And so, as I said, they can range from kind of the simpler models over on the left, and all the way up to sort of more complex models here. And this is an example of a computational simulation of a cadaver knee simulator. So over on the left is this physical experimental knee simulator, and over on the right is this computational representation that we have built of it. And so the idea is that we can do things computationally that we can't do experimentally, or we can do them more efficiently, look at more, in this case, this is a knee model. If we're interested in knee design, we'd be able to look at a lot more design variation than we'd be able to look at if we were creating physical parts, doing actual surgery, all that kind of stuff. So we've got probably 4 or 5 different research areas going on in the lab, but the 2 of them that I'm going to highlight today are an automated generation of finite element models, so these computational models from medical images like MRI and CT of osteoarthritic knees in particular. So people who have some sort of knee degeneration, they're sort of on track to go on to need a knee replacement later in life, potentially. And then I'll also highlight this other study, a little bit newer study, a work that we've been doing on multi-scale neuromuscular models, where we're trying to integrate some of the neural system into our existing simulations of the musculoskeletal model. So the reason why we want to automatically be able to develop these finite element models is that it allows us to develop not just a handful of individual patients, but thousands. So we can genuinely look at what's happening across a population and get an understanding of that variability. And so our specific interest is in osteoarthritis risk, which is why we're looking at osteoarthritis patients. And so we're interested in, well, what are the factors? How does the geometry of the joint, the biology of the joint, the mechanics and loading of the joint, how do they all kind of play into this risk of osteoarthritis? And so we start with medical images over here on the left. We have developed some algorithms where we can automatically identify different features in those models. So here you see this is a knee model again. So we see the femur popping up here in kind of brown, the tibia popping up in purple. So we're automatically able to identify these structures in the knee and create these 3-dimensional models over here on the right. And so we can kind of clean that up a little bit. And so we're at the stage where we're developing. So this is sort of the automatic output from our computational algorithm, and then we can convert that into these simulations that I've been talking about, where we actually model, a knee bend or a chair rise, or just someone walking around during gait, those kinds of things. And then on the neuromuscular side, we're interested, as I said, in connecting the motor neuron system over here with the musculoskeletal system, so that we're actually driving the body in the same way that we physically move around. So we're not just directly applying kinematics or forces, we're applying the electrical signals from the brain and generating motion in the same way. And that allows us to look at a bunch of neurodegenerative or neurodevelopment conditions where there is some sort of mismatch in what's going on between the brain and the musculoskeletal system. And so I'll kind of skip over this in the interest of time. And so we're also doing sort of developing 3D models of those muscles to help us understand that a little bit better. And basically what we're looking for in terms of students in the lab is we have a pretty wide variety of students. So we have mechanical engineering undergrads, CS students. So I've got one computing PhD student, one material science PhD student. So you obviously have to be interested in that computational side, but whether it's on the material side or you're a hardcore coder or you're more interested in the applications piece on the biomedical side, we have all of those folks in our lab. And that is about it. Thank you.
All right, this is the project that we're doing currently, and this is the one that gets applied to the biomedical field. I'm a laser engineer. I'm not a person who typically does biomedical experiments, but I'm trying to get into it. So our experiment currently, I'll explain it, how we use it. We use this for solar systems, and it's used for solar systems packed bed. Essentially, what we have is a sample that's extremely porous, and we shoot it with a laser, which is visible. And what we measure is essentially its thermal conductivity, or essentially how it transfers heat through the body, or how the heat penetrates into the system. So we have been able to do quite interesting work with this. We are able to detect different compositions. We are able to detect if a surface has multiple cracks or multiple holes. We can actually get different values of these slopes that we are measuring. And our application that we have proposed at least is to try and do the studies on bones and bones with tissue. So essentially we have a method to look at cracks in bones or changes in porosity in bone, because what we are doing in our lab is measuring porosity. And as bone and human structures are porous structures, we are hoping that we can get a grant to study porosity using this technique. So that's it. That's all that I have. Questions?
What type of background for students would fit this or your work?
So ideally, people with mechanical engineering background or biomedical, so BME students will fit really well because they'll be doing thermal transport in their undergrad, I guess taking some amount of mechanical engineering courses, along with people who have some amount of biology would fit perfectly for this kind of project. It's not necessarily an electrical engineering work. The work that we are doing for solar cells is in electrical engineering, but not if I'm doing bones and tissues.
And are you immediately looking for students, or maybe in the near future?
I was looking last year. I don't think I will be, I have the bandwidth for this year, but if we have submitted a grant and if the grant gets funded, then it would be right away this year. So it's all up in the air.
All right, hopefully everybody can see that. So I'm Tyler Brown, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Kinesiology, and I direct, it's called the Center for Orthopedic and Biomechanics Research. COBIRD kind of main overarching mission is to advance neuromechanical understanding of human movement through research and innovation. So most of my projects kind of fit under that mission statement. We typically use motion capture force platforms, EMG, to conduct our neuromechanical analyses, right? So we're really using motion capture to quantify the kinematics or kind of spatial temporal parameters of motion. We integrate that in with our force platforms to really provide understanding of the forces that are produced or cause motion. So that's kind of our traditional mechanical analyses part of it. The neuro aspect comes in. We use electromyography or EMG electrodes to basically rudimentarily quantify muscle activation, kind of on off, percentage of activation of specific muscles, which allows us to do a good job quantifying human movement. Right. So most of my research kind of fits under the idea we're trying to understand lower limb neuromechanics during locomotor tasks to prevent acute musculoskeletal injury or to slow development progression of musculoskeletal diseases like osteoarthritis. So kind of two examples of projects that I may be looking for PhD students in the near future. I have what some people might call a wonky idea of a measure that would estimate what I think will estimate joint instability. All right, so I have this line of research where we're trying to prove or disprove that this jerk measure effectively quantifies instability at the knee joint. This is important because instability is related to acute injury. And people that go on to develop osteoarthritis of the knee often have episodes of instability. And so I think we can use or quantify instability at this joint before you can consciously detect it by quantifying jerk or jerk cost, or basically estimating smoothness of knee motion during activities of daily living. And so we have a project where we're bringing in healthy and then people with OA at different levels, kind of mild to severe, and trying to look at, does this jerk cost of knee motion increase as you progressively get worse arthritis at the joint? So that's one project where we're looking for PhD students in the future. Another one is trying to develop a diagnostic platform to basically detect and monitor stress fracture. Specifically, we're initially looking at tibial stress fracture, because we know that early successful diagnosis is key to preventing the development of fractures. One of the issues is these stress reactions are often misdiagnosed as shin splints, and the athlete, soldier, whoever continues on with physical activity and then develops a stress fracture. Whereas if they had just accurately diagnosed the stress reaction at the initial physical consultation, a short rest period would prevent the development of stress fracture. So ultimately, we're trying to gain a better measure or a more accurate measure, biomechanical measure that's related to stress fracture risk, so that we can predict who's going to be at high risk for developing these stress reactions or bone stress fractures, and then using ultrasound to monitor the bone health. Essentially, ultrasound has advantages over X-ray because it can detect stress fracture way before an X-ray, and it has advantages over like MR or CT because there's no radiation. It can be portable. So we're trying to develop basically a jig and associated algorithms so we can standardize the collection of the image on the bone and automate the quantification of the stress reaction underneath. So those are kind of the couple projects I have in the future that I'll be looking for PhD students. And typically, I guess my students are from kinesiology backgrounds or ME backgrounds and would fit either our biomechanics emphasis or our human performance emphasis.
There we go. All right. So yeah, my name is Ben Johnson. I'm an assistant professor in electrical and computer engineering, and I run the integrated bioelectronic medicine lab. So pretty self-descriptive. So integrated means that I have to make integrated circuits. That's my specialty in training, and perhaps also my curse in this life. Let's see. And then also bioelectronic medicine. So that's using electrical stimulation, electrical recording to deliver therapy in the body. So or one way to put it, our vision is really to take this kind of, original stuff from Galvani way back in, 1790 and turn it into these kind of nanoliter scale devices that we use to deliver therapy. So what do I actually do for research in the entirety of my group? There's two main thrusts that I work on. So first, is bioelectronic medicine, of course. So really, working toward next generation therapy with microscale implants, and then also integrated sensor systems, so enabling new science. So kind of under the blue area, that's the more core EE type stuff. So that's anything from lab on chip. So taking advantage of like massive parallel recording systems to say like measure brain activity or other types of basic science, working on some wearables for heart rate variability or EMG or things like that. Then also kind of a new direction for us is working on SPAD imagers. So those are single photon avalanche diodes that have a binary response to incident light. And so we're actually using that to image fluorescence of DNA for the nucleic acid memory project. As we're imaging the lifetime of fluorescence and also performing super resolution microscopy. And then have some work on structural health monitoring and IoT. And in terms of bioelectronic medicine, so there's a few different areas that we're focusing on. One is using ultrasonic wireless power transfer to miniaturize devices that can be deeply implanted in the body. And then also looking at ways to do novel neuromodulation. So that's using electrical stimulation to really manipulate the activity of the nervous system. And then also some work on brain-machine interfaces. So mostly on the technology side is how do we optimize these interfaces to the brain? And then of course, closed loop. So that's kind of tying it all together using kind of machine learning search strategies to find optimal therapies that we can use in the body. So I guess what kind of students do I want to employ? So first of all, we'll start with this. Yes, please be friendly, smart, creative, and passionate. All right. Because if you're deficient in one of those areas, it can be a bit tough. All right. And then also kind of, I think here's kind of my laundry list of things I'm looking for, where the blue is kind of the more core EE area. I don't know if there's anyone really in this group that fits into these categories, but yeah, hey, please let me know. But then also on the biomedical side, I'm looking for people with strong backgrounds, say like in neuroscience or electrophys, any work with neural engineering, ultrasound or piezoelectric work. Also, if you have some experience with lab animals, that's also extremely valuable for the group. Right. And I guess the last thing is whether I'm looking for somebody right now. I think to keep it simple without like talking about, well, if this, I'll just say yes, and then we'll work out the details later. Right.
I got a email from Sophia. She's having some travel miscues, and so isn't going to be able to join, unfortunately.
Okay.
I will say that Sophia does have, if you look at the mechanical and biomedical engineering website, there's a talk that she gave that discusses her research, if the students are interested. And other people can chime in, but the general gist of her research is that she is looking at developing tunable biomaterials to repair musculoskeletal tissues, such as tendon. That's kind of a big picture synopsis. And I do know that she is looking to hire for fall 2022. Ganesh or Claire, anyone else want to chime in? Or
yeah, I think she has interest in developing musculoskeletal tissues, not only tendon, but maybe muscle, bone, and maybe how they interface with each other, right? Using tunable mechanical properties so that she can sort of seamlessly transition from bone to muscle by controlling the extracellular matrix properties in hydrogels. So lots of cell biology, but also some developmental work that can help tissue engineering approaches. I think one of the projects that she's one of the long-term goals is that can we make these functional muscle fibers that we can implant into people by growing them in the lab. So if you're interested in those areas, I think she'll be a perfect person to work with.
And I believe she's one of the few to be working with spider silk for musculoskeletal tissue application.
So I am Erin Mannon. I have been at Boise State for a year and a half in the mechanical and biomedical engineering department. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I study biomechanics, so the study of mechanical laws relating to the movement or structure of living organisms, like a lot of us do. Tyler did a pretty good job of explaining kind of typical motion capture labs where we use motion capture cameras, sometimes video as well, force plates and electromyography to get a kind of full picture of how people move. And I had a baby and then started asking questions about how can we measure and understand the biomechanics of babies? And that's really where my research started. So I direct the Boise Applied Biomechanics of Infants Lab, the baby lab. And we study how babies move and use their muscles and what that means for product safety and musculoskeletal development. So this is what research in our lab looks like. We have the cutest research on campus for sure. We study product-specific designs of product classes and work with the government to see if products are safe or not from a movement perspective. So we're looking at how babies are positioned and what that means for suffocation safety. We also look at musculoskeletal development, so how products are positioning babies' joints and what that means for proper development compared to some orthopedics treatments for babies with hip dysplasia. And then we also look at motor milestones and kind of just general everyday care and to understand how babies are moving and using their muscles and what that means in the context of safety and musculoskeletal development. So what am I looking for? I guess our projects, we have kind of 4 main projects. One focuses on hip dysplasia. So we're exploring use of various sensors to get some forces at the hip and understanding how babies with hip dysplasia are treated and what we can learn about that. We look at motor milestones. So we just finished up a project exploring how babies actually achieve a role, the techniques that they use, the muscles they recruit, and what that means again for product safety. We look a lot at product interactions and safety. So not using living babies, we develop different techniques and methods of testing products to see if we can evaluate safety of products before they ever reach, an infant's home. And then new project is looking at how the impact of body position impacts breathing biomechanics. So how a baby is placed, how that impacts their ability to breathe. The skills that we're looking for in the lab are an open mind, positive attitude, problem solving. Most of the stuff we do is novel, so there's a lot of figuring things out in the lab. Independence and programming skills are a must. The folks in my lab are mechanical, kinesiology, and bio-e backgrounds, so any of those are totally workable in the lab. Right now, we have 2 PhD students, 2 master's students. We work with the Idaho College of Osteopathic Medicine. So we have ICOM students who work in the lab regularly and a gaggle of undergrads, lots of undergrads that work in the lab. We also collaborate with industry, the government, clinicians, and fellow BME faculty. So kind of an ability to communicate with other folks and a willingness and a desire to do kind of multidisciplinary research is something that we're looking for. So that's all I have, short and sweet. Am I looking for people? I'm looking for somebody if it's the right fit. So, we have lots of projects going on and there's always a need for folks to kind of be plugged into different projects and obviously are still applying for funding for some of these different projects. But if it's the right person, definitely find a way to make it happen. So thanks.
Hi everyone. So my name is Güneş Üzer. I'm in mechanical biomedical engineering. I'm the director of Mechanical Adaptations Laboratory. So our lab is located at the Micro and Engineering Center. We have lots of cool devices, but none of this means really nothing without all the people who does the hard work in the lab. So all the credit really goes to them. So our current team is about 10 people. We have a lab manager and sort of a senior postdoc in the faculty, Ana Maria. Sean is the lab manager in the lab. We have currently 4 PhD students, and it really grown in the last year. Omar just joined us this semester, and Said and Nilsson are just joining in the upcoming semester. So we're really excited that they're joining the team. We have, Nilsson. So we have 2 MS students. Nina was supposed to be a MS student this semester, but she decided to do a minor in biology. So maybe next semester she'll be a MS student. And then we also have some Chase, biology student, and we have some Casey just joining us from ICOM. Usually the people in my lab come from different backgrounds. So we have people from biology, biochemistry, computer science, mechanical engineering, and actually Nilsson is going to be a kinesiology person. So we really are accepting a number of different trainings. Usually people who graduate from the lab can go either into academia or engineering jobs or other type of science positions. So it's really gives you a good training. And we travel a lot. So there's a picture underneath from the ORS from 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago. And I will say half of those people are from the biomedical engineering program at Boise State. So we really have a very vibrant musculoskeletal research program, and we all work in somewhat related topics. So it's a pretty good environment to be in. So our research vision is to sort of twofold. One is to understand how tissues and cells are regulated by mechanical forces. This could be either engineered things like vibration plates, or could be physiological loads like exercise. And we use that information to then develop mechanical therapies that improve musculoskeletal health. Our primary focus is bone and bone physiology. We sort of try to understand how forces are changing, or what the forces inside the bone as the cells feel them. For example, here's a sort of a tibia, although it's a picture of a femur. Then if you're running, for example, right, you'll get some compressional forces as your feet hits the ground. And if you lift your foot, there will be some spring back and tension. And if you can imagine that you're doing this about 2 hertz, right, you can say that you have this dynamic compression tension environment that's happening in the bone. And since there's lots of fluid both inside and outside, there's lots of fluid flow and accelerations that is happening. So if you can think of a cell that's sitting one of those surfaces, you can see that they get these complex loading environments that sort of change how they function. So in the lab, we try to understand this paradigm at multiple scale levels. For example, at the sort of organismal level, we do exercise studies with mice. We try to understand how physical activity affects the bone structure. We apply sort of bioreactor systems that mimics exercise using low intensity vibration. And we look at things like micro CT scans that looks at the geometrical changes, bone loss and bone gain, and also try to develop strategies that help people to gain muscle, bone, and balance. At the tissue level, we try to mimic the mechanical forces that the bone is getting using tissue engineering approaches. Here's one example. We use 3D printed trabecular structures, and then we encapsulate them in hydrogels using cells. And then we also built some bioreactors to apply mechanical stimulation to these cells to understand how mechanical environment really sort of connects with the cell function. This particular example and then the bioreactor that we are making now is going to send to International Space Station for an experiment that we are developing. So we really work with a number of agencies and a number of problems, how astronauts lose bone health, how aging affects bone making potential, and how can we develop strategies for people who cannot exercise. At the cell level, we try to replicate these mechanical environments using bioreactor systems, including simulated microgravity. We have a number of vibration bioreactors that we built in the lab, or we can do mechanical stimulation under a microscope to look at the changes in the cells. For example, we can develop now machine learning algorithms to understand how these mechanical inputs change the structure of the cell using computer systems, and also make these sort of the structures that we detect them, we convert them into finite element models so we can understand how changes in the tissue structure or the cell structure relate to changes in the forces that the cells feel. And we try to get into this little bit more quantified manner than you will see in other biology laboratories. So I think with that, the general expectations in the lab is that the one is quality. That means that we expect students to understand the literature that they are dealing with, and then be responsible of reading and understanding what's out there. That leads to, we believe, strategic use of resources so we don't waste anything, and also expectations, accurate notes, and attention to safety. So independence and teamwork both encouraged in the laboratory, right? This is your project, so that means that you have to work independently. But since we work in different fields, like we have an engineering student, computer science student, and also maybe a biology student, so that means that we need to share ideas and methods so that we can grow as a team together. If you're a PhD student, that the expectation is that you publish 3 first author papers prior to graduation and maybe present your works at national conferences. That's it. So thank you for listening. And if you want to get in touch with me, please do so. I may be looking for a student in the future, but if it's really a good fit, we can try to make it work.
All right. Hey, my name is Trevor Lujan. I'll give you a little quick background. I am a mechanical engineering by training, and I did my Ph.D. in bioengineering or biomedical engineering at University of Utah. And then I did a postdoc in Portland at a hospital where we worked with clinicians to develop products that were directly used by patients. About 10 years ago, I joined Boise State and started the Northwest Tissue Mechanics Lab, where the mission is, in general, to advance patient care and musculoskeletal health. So a little more background. Really a core focus of my group is that we look at the effect of mechanical force and not only the injury of tissues and organs, but on healing. And mostly we do this at the macro scale. The lab is a combination of experimental, computational, and theoretical approaches, although I'd say mostly experimental. The lab vision is to translate our research on joint disease into innovative medical solutions that are effective, practical, and affordable. So we're always kind of looking at that aspect of medical technology. And currently in my lab, there are 3 PhD students. I have a few undergrads, and I also work with a software engineer. So I'll just talk about a couple projects that we have active right now, and that I'm always interested in looking to staff. One is a meniscus project. And real brief background, meniscus, this is in your knee. The tears are common. There's really not an effective treatment to restore the physiological function. And when you have a tear, you have this increased risk of osteoarthritis. And so one thing that we'd like to do is to help prevent these injuries or delay these injuries so that you have a longer period of an active lifestyle. So with that in mind, a couple things that we do is that we like to push and pull on tissue. So on the left, what we're doing is we're just cutting what's called a coupon. It's a little piece of tissue from the meniscus, and we're experimentally pulling this to failure. We then use visualization methods to look at, in this next image, to look at where the failure happened. And then we try to recreate that failure in a computer simulation using finite elements so that we can really describe what's happening and create models then that can better predict when failure is going to occur and then ultimately how to prevent it. So that's really at a tissue level. We also have projects looking at a joint level. So here on the image on your left, a graduate student of mine created a knee simulator. So this device, you can see it's pushing down, it's turning. In that little fishbowl is a human knee, and it's being moved similar to a joint, or similar to someone walking. And so we do that for like 1 million cycles to see what happens over time. We've then developed visualization methods to look at how that tissue gets worn over time with lots of cycles. And our ultimate goal then is to be able to identify activities that are high risk for injury, as well as activities that are very safe. And something very exciting about our program, I teamed up with Dr. Fitzpatrick and a few other the BME affiliates, and we were able to win an award for this device on the right. It's a joint simulator, which will allow us to recreate motions in the knee, in the hip, in the ankle, in the back. So lots of different joints in a very physiological way. And it's going to probably affect a lot of projects on our campus. We're the first in the Northwest to get this device. It's about $250,000. So it's and it's going to come this summer. So a lot of the projects in the future might be using this device in my lab. One other quick project is I also look at healing. So I have a ligament tears. They're very common, so are tendon tears, but they're very slow to heal and they can lead to chronic disability. So we're looking at how do we speed healing? How do we accelerate and enhance healing? So we want to do this looking at mechanical methods because that's a very important factor in healing. And so my grad students have developed this bioreactor that applies very controlled loads to soft tissue constructs. These are constructs that we make in the lab. We work with Dr. Uzer's lab on this project. And so we put cells in, we stimulate these, and we're trying to figure out what is the optimal loading conditions with the idea that we can maybe then inform physical therapists as well as clinicians on how to best treat soft tissue injuries. Because right now, if you have one and you go to a doctor, if you go to 10 doctors, they might tell you 10 different things. There's not a lot of really good scientific evidence on how best to heal from a soft tissue injury. And then finally, real quick, my lab, we like to take ideas that we have that are good ideas and take them all the way to a product or some sort of finished product that other people can use. So we've developed a couple of physical tools like the Print-a-Punch as well as software. And we're currently going through a process of putting these applications on the web. And this is actually an area that I do have funding for right now that I'm interested in staffing. So with that, student needs. Typical students in my lab, they have an engineering background. Most are mechanical, but I've also worked with electrical as well as computer. I've even hired physics majors. I do a lot of math in my lab, so mathematics backgrounds are good. It's a mixture of hands-on and computational work. And I guess similar to Dr. Ben Johnson, we're looking for people that are passionate, that are energetic, that that work well together. I think we have a great group in the lab, and it's a fun place to work. So if you are interested, I would like to get more funding before I hire my next student, but like other people have said, if the fit's really perfect, it's something that I would maybe try to figure out funding for. So with that, thank you. And I guess we'll take a little bit of time right now to see if the students have any questions for any of the remaining faculty presenters. Morgan, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I thought all the presentations were really good. Like, I've met a lot of you guys already and heard about your research, but it was nice to have a refresher.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you. All right. Well, if there's no questions, here's what I would say is a good next step. First off, this process, if you're one of the students that are here that have been recommended for admission to the program, your job is to now find a match with faculty who are willing to fund you and supervise your research. And so I encourage you to contact faculty directly that you're interested in working with. Something we could do is if you email Ashley Holden a list of any BME faculty you're interested in, we can pass that information along to the faculty. That's also an option. And if you are, I know some students are, trying to find a good fit. If you actually find that your good fit is with someone maybe in the biology program or in a material science program that aren't affiliated with the BME, go ahead and let us know. And that is something that we can start a conversation with those faculty about your interest. So this is a kind of you're trying to find a partner to dance with. So it's be proactive, persevere, and try to make sure that you put yourself out there and talk to people. Okay. So thank you very much. We will post this this meeting so that you can review it if you would like to, and that'll be sent out next week. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and have a great rest of your day.